Hello, lovelies, and welcome to this episode of The Happy Psychic. I am your host, your guiding light, Gemma Lonsdale, and it's just me today. So I know on the latest episodes, there's always been a guest on the show, and I do think that it's good to have an additional voice and to have some conversation. I always and really enjoy the different guests coming on, but there is a lot of questions that I have started to get on TikTok, on Instagram. I've obviously got the YouTube channel up and running now as well. So there's questions coming in on that. And I do try to go back to people individually, but it did make me think that actually it would be quite a good show to put these questions out there and help you with your spiritual connection as well, because it is typically questions about how I connect. There's a few questions about the afterlife and things like that. So yes, I thought I would come on here and we could do that this week instead, and it can be a little bit of a different episode, as if you're not getting enough of me already. So the first question I had was, how did I first get in touch with my guides? And that's quite a good question, because I wasn't always aware that I was a psychic medium. I was always very intuitive and I always knew information, but I didn't really know how I knew it, if that made sense. I was always a very good reader of people. I used to work as a headhunter and I had my own recruitment firm for a number of years. And as part of that, because I was doing headhunting, I had to do a really in-depth interview with all of the potential candidates for the various clients that I was working with. And it meant that I was having to spend like a considerable amount of time, maybe, a 45-minute or an hour long interview with at least, with each person at the very beginning. And it meant that, I just started getting information about people and picking up on things that were happening in their personal life. And I still hadn't realized at that stage that there was anything to do with a spiritual gift. And whenever I did start to become aware of that, there was a lot of synchronicities that I experienced and coincidences that were there was so many of them. I was just like, this can't be happening. Like, this is just unreal. There was just so many, and it felt like the universe was trying to talk to me. And what I did was I got myself off to a spiritualist church, because I wasn't really in a place in life where, I don't know psychic mediums. I didn't know anybody else that was spiritually gifted. I just didn't have anybody like that in my friendship circle or in my network that I was aware of. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll get myself to the spiritualist church where, the psychics and the mediums go. And I started to develop a little bit. I went and bought myself a deck of tarot cards. I bought a pack of the Rider-Waite Smith, the RWS deck, and a book to go with it. And I started doing cards, and I didn't know what they meant. I didn't know. I was sitting reading up, and there was one situation where I was doing a reading on it, and all of a sudden I connected to somebody, and he was giving me all this information about the reading, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, has this really just happened? So I doubted it for quite a long time. And my vision started quite slowly, because I'm clairvoyant, so I see spirit. But in a lot of cases, I have seen people in front of me and standing next to me, like an apparition, like a holographic image. That's a life-size holographic image where you can sort of see all the detail, sometimes in color, not always, but it's sort of see-through, like how you would imagine a ghost might look. So I do get that, but that would be the rare occasion. In most instances, spirit will use my mind's eye to bring me symbolism and imagery through. So I might see someone's features, but I won't see their full body. Or I will see a facial expression, or I will see a hand gesture, or I might see something, trying to think, like if I've seen a piece of string being pulled along, I know from that someone is being strung along. So they sort of bring things through like that to me. But that was what I was getting at that stage. But it was only whenever I was using the cards. Without the cards, my connection just wasn't strong enough, and I wasn't getting the information. I found that the cards, I just had a loose gaze, and I seen where I was being drawn to, and all of a sudden the visions would start to flow. And that's how I was getting my information. I wasn't really hearing spirit at that stage. Not that I was aware of, or it was so faint that I was missing it. And then one day I just woke up and everything was different. And that was literally how it happened. So I had been developing for quite some time, feeling that I wasn't really making any progress. And then just one day, Spirit had decided, right, today's the day, and they flicked the switch. So that's how I first got in touch with my guides. During that time, I was doing a lot of meditating and trying to really deepen my connection, both with Spirit and myself. And I would encourage you to do that, if you are looking to develop. Definitely focus on deepening your connection with yourself first and foremost, because we need to be in touch with ourselves more in order to be able to pick up the subtleties of spirit communication. You might be an intuitive, you might feel and sense things, you might have that gut intuition, you might just have that where you just know information, but you don't know where it's come from. You might hear and you might get visions. There's so many different ways that we receive information, and we're naturally gifted in a certain area. That's typically what I find and what my guides tell me. Yes, you can develop your clairvoyance, you can develop your clairaudience where you hear spirit, but chances are you will have a natural gift that you were strongest in, and it might not be clairvoyance. You might have to work really, really hard and show spirit a lot of dedication in order to develop your clairvoyance. So I never encourage people to focus on developing a clair. Just focus on the connection and then let the information come, and it comes in naturally to you how you're most adept at actually receiving that information. And then you can start to build on other things after that and focus on the separate clairs and decide, okay, I really want to hear spirit, so I'm going to develop my clairaudience. And it is really important to be dedicated. It's very, very important to show that dedication to spirit and to be prepared to put the work in. Whenever I was developing, whenever I bought my deck of cards and I had my book, I would have sat every day with my cards. Sometimes it would have only been 15 minutes, sometimes it would have been an hour, but every single day I had those cards in my hand. And that is really important. And spirit do need to see that you're dedicated in order for them to put the work in with you as well, because it is a lot of effort. There's an awful lot of work that needs to go on behind the scenes in order to ensure that you're capable and that you're at the right level and that you're a finely tuned machine in order to communicate with spirits. So they do need to see that you have the intention to develop and that you're committed to it. And then obviously the meditation will really help as well, and really help you tune in with yourself and open that connection with spirit as well. During meditation, it makes it a lot easier for spirit to do the work behind the scenes that they need to do. So it is really important to actually do that. I would also encourage to use cards or some kind of aid. For the majority of people, I do get told that cards will work and that cards will be a good purchase. I'm just looking at my decks that I've got. Even though I don't use cards anymore, I still have quite a lot of decks. And cards for the most part do help, but some people might be more attuned to the pendulum, to runes, to like working with candles. She's showing me somebody just sitting working with a candle flame. So there's a lot of different things. There's trance mediumship. So there's a lot of different things that you can really try in order to really develop your connection. Okay. So that is what I would do there. In terms, okay, so I don't see you using the cards. How does using tools like cards, etc., help with your spiritual connection? Okay. So I probably answered part of that already. I did start using cards, but I don't use the cards anymore. And actually my connection is so strong that I'm just constantly connected to my guide, but not everybody will experience that. Some people will have to tune in and meditate first in order to hear and see and receive information from spirit. Other people will have a constant connection to their guides, or, you know, be in the supermarket and suddenly have the lady in front's husband come through, you know, saying, can you give her a message? And it does happen. That doesn't really happen to me, to be honest. Very, very rare occasions. For the most part, I'll connect with my guide first and foremost, and I can communicate with her back and forth. There has been times, like there was a time recently where I actually, for some reason, just felt really, really drawn to a girl's TikTok. I think she commented or liked one of my posts, I think. And for some reason, I was just really, really drawn to her. And as soon as I clicked on her profile and her picture, this guy stepped forward and he wanted to give her a message, but because I wasn't following her and she wasn't following me, we couldn't message each other. And I actually commented on one of her videos, and I've never done that before. I work on the basis that if spirit give me a message, then it's something that has to be delivered. But that's usually whenever I'm giving someone a reading, or when it's someone that's close to me. Generally, I don't filter the information. I might change the words and deliver it in a softer way, but I don't filter the information. So if spirit tell me something, then you can be guaranteed that I will be telling you during the reading. I don't hold back. You know, I do know people that was, you know, that'll say, oh no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't read on this subject, or I wouldn't pass that sort of information on. But I just think if spirit know better than me, so if they're telling me to tell you something, then they know that you need to hear it and that you're capable of dealing with that information. They don't give information to scare people or to upset intentionally. You know, it's always with good intentions, and they never ever would give you information that would scare you or anything like that. So I know that if they're giving that to me, then I need to deliver that to you. But I think that you need to find your own way of working and your own ethics, but those are mine. So if spirit's giving me the information, then I'm giving it to the person. However, it is a little bit different whenever it is a stranger. And as I say, I don't get that happening very often. So in that case, I did just say, you know, is it okay if I give you this message, would you be open to receiving the message? And she really was. So I gladly give it to her. With using the cards and everything, how it helps your connection. How do I explain this? So if you see me reading on YouTube, or if I'm on TikTok, or even now, because I'm connected to my guide now, and she's just given everybody like a little wave and a curtsy. Sometimes you'll just see me sort of looking off, or I'll look off to here, or I'll look down a little bit. And what I find is that whenever I soften my gaze, I just sort of, it's almost like I'm zoning out, and I'm switching from using my physical eyes to using my mind. And that's exactly what happens whenever you're using a card. So if I get a card for some reason, which deck? I'm just gonna go with this deck. I don't really use this deck a lot, but it's lovely cards. The Lightseers deck, and these are tarot cards, and they're very, very beautiful. Lots of lovely colors. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see some of the beautiful designs. But the cards are designed in a way that there's sort of imagery there. And whenever you're looking at the card, you know, if you've, you know, asked a question, or you're doing a tarot spread or a spread with your oracle cards, and you've sort of given them a shuffle, you've picked a card out, or you might decide to pick a card up off the top. I always pick through the deck. And all of a sudden you'll be looking at the card. And if you just sort of look at the card, give yourself a few minutes, just look at the card, but soften your gaze a little bit. Soften your gaze and just see where you're drawn to, and see what information comes in. And it, for me personally, when I was developing, my clairvoyance was the strongest that I was aware of. It was the strongest Claire, and it would have triggered a vision. So all of a sudden I would have just found myself looking at something on the card. And on this Four of Swords card here, you know, we've got a heart on there. She's got a tattoo on her arm. There's some, I don't know if it's rope or straw or but there's different things on that card that you would find yourself being drawn to, and all of a sudden it just triggers those visions to come in. That's how it worked for me. And it's a very, very similar situation whenever you are, you know, learning to trust your intuition and your guidance, and you'll just start to feel a bit of a shift in your energy and feel just, you'll feel something. You might feel the energy, you might feel heavier, you might feel lighter, you might feel excitement. You might suddenly feel like your throat's sore. You might feel like you kind of want to talk, but you can't get the words out. There's a lot of different feelings that really come into play. An example of that, whenever I started developing, we were doing an activity in the development group that I was a part of, and I sat with a photograph. I had a photograph of someone, and I was doing what's called evidential mediumship. And that's really where you're bringing someone through, and you're, you know, telling, you know, that their loved one, you know, how they passed over, a bit about their personality, things that are specific to that person and the connection that they had with that person, that can really help solidify and validate really that I'm connected. I'm connected to spirit. Spirit exists. You know, your loved one is still alive, but just not in the physical body. You know, they still exist, and I'm connected to them. I'm bringing you information that I wouldn't otherwise know. And in that instance, I was seeing visions, and I'd seen the man dressed in white, and he was taking boxes of bread out of the back of a van and bringing them into a corner shop, and I was seeing these French loaves and things. So I thought, oh, is he like a baker? He works with bread? I've seen him delivering bread. And she was like, yes, he is. He's a baker. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. Because it's very nerve-wracking whenever you're starting to work up your confidence to give information off to people in that way. And all of a sudden I started to feel sick. It was the most horrible feeling. And my throat was really, really sore. And I couldn't understand why I was suddenly feeling so sick. And it was actually one of the more experienced mediums that said to me, you know, it sounds like he could have had throat cancer and he's on chemotherapy, because that's the sick feeling and the throat. And that was exactly what it was. And I wouldn't have known that. But whenever I said to the girl, like, this is what I'm getting, she says, yeah, he had throat cancer or cancer in the esophagus or something. And he did have chemotherapy, and it was the cancer that took him in the end. So unless you're really in tune with your body, you're going to miss those little subtle signals. So that's why it's really beneficial to meditate and just start to attune yourself with those subtle little energies, because they will come in subtly at the start. So you could use cards to get information through. If you wanted to try and connect to someone, you could use a photograph. You know, sometimes that really helps the connection, and you'll get additional information through on the person that way. You know, there are people that say never trust a medium who asks for a photograph. And I personally, I'm lucky that I'm in the position that I don't need it. However, there's no harm in using that. It's just like using a card or using another tool. So I'm of the opinion that it doesn't matter, because you're not going to get anything from a photo that is going to make the person doubt, unless you're, you know, looking at a photo of a woman in, you know, a black jacket and saying, oh, she liked to wear dark colors. Now that is something that you maybe could pick up from that photo and make assumptions on. But likely whenever you're picking up on her energies and the things about her personality, and, you know, think, you know, about depression, maybe, you know, she's somebody that has experienced depression, and she would have been a very nervous person, didn't really like speaking up for herself, was very introvert, you know, things like that. You can't tell from a photo unless you're using your intuition and your gifts. So that would be my recommendation. But you need to just do what you feel is more comfortable for you, and find your way. I do find that I pick up a lot of information now about the afterlife, and mostly because I'm a very inquisitive person, and I like to ask questions, and I ask questions about what happens when you die, what happens when this happens, what happens when that happens. And when people come and ask me questions, I'm able to ask them. Sometimes I've already had half an answer from spirit, but they maybe feel that at that time, they're able to deliver me an additional little bit of information at that stage. Because our human minds, we're not meant to know all of the answers, and our minds aren't capable of knowing all of the answers. There's so many unanswered questions about the universe, and what happens when we die, and how do past lives work, and what's the difference between spirit. And so there's so many things that we can't possibly have all the answers. So what I find is that spirits spoon feed me, and then once I've got my head around something, then they'll give me something else, and they'll keep giving me something else. So I did, because I've posted a few predictions and things about the war and what we're moving into, which I've taken quite a lot of flack for, which I understand. There's a lot of people that look at it and think, oh, you're just trying to scaremonger people. You're just trying to get your followers and your likes up. Well, for one, I have no benefit to scaremonger people. There's nothing that I gain from scaring people unnecessarily. It's not like I'm selling nuclear bomb shelters. I've got nothing to gain from trying to frighten people. But also, there's easier ways to get your likes and followers up, and it's really went against me posting that stuff. But my guide has really pushed me to it, because she thinks that it's important that people know. It's important that people are starting to think, okay, I need to stock up on food. There's food shortages coming. I need to stock up on food. I need to have a surplus of water. I need to have a plan in place. I need to be prepared for when things start to happen, because when it happens, it's going to happen really, really quick. So, a little bit sidetracked. So it has been quite hard dealing with that information and the backlash that I've been getting, because I guess it's hard for me because I am a well-intentioned person, and I have a good heart. I want to help people, and then when people come at me, that I'm a charlatan and I'm trying to scare people and trying to, get my likes and followers up. Like, there was some girl that said, you're directing us to your YouTube, for monetization. And I think at that time I had 35 subscribers. So I'm thinking, well, I'm not making any, I'm not making money off my YouTube. So again, there's nothing for me to benefit apart from being able to share, longer bits of content that are more in depth. However, it has sparked questions from people about, are all deaths destined? So if we think, for example, if there was a nuclear war and, Putin decides to send a nuke into Ukraine or Germany or France or wherever he's going to send it, does that mean that all of those people that do die, were they all destined to die? And what I'm being told by my guide is that no, that doesn't. There will be some who have volunteered, she's saying, to go and to help with this situation that we're coming into from the other side. So there are people that have volunteered as part of their life contract. So that means that before they incarnated in this existence, and it has been my experience from working with spirit that we have had many incarnations. So our soul, on a soul level, has had many incarnations. So this is just one of the lives that I am living, as a spiritual being. And before we incarnate, typically, not in all instances I've been told, but for the most part, we would have a life contract or a soul contract. And that would contain things like destined encounters with specific people that we're to have in this life. If we wanted to say, meet up in the year 20 23 and you know, have a relationship and marry somebody and have children come from that. Like things like that aren't always destined, but sometimes they are. Also things like sometimes if we are destined to be the president of the United States, or we're destined to you know, die a long and painful death, because we've chose that because we want to experience that for the lessons on a soul level, or we opt to, you know, die in the war, which is destined. Like I have been told that this war that is happening is destined, but that the nuclear element of it is the bit that wasn't destined. So as part of that, naturally, there will have been people coming into this incarnation knowing on a soul level that they were coming in to serve a purpose, possibly to fight in the war, to experience that, and to then die as part of that, and to then be part of the spirit team that are helping people on the other side. So there are people that are destined to pass. And I know it's been a very, very touchy subject, and it's very uncomfortable whenever we're talking about somebody who is alive on this earth and who is going to be going over into spirit. But my guide has told me on several occasions now that the Russians are going to capture Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, and that he is unfortunately going to die. And what she has actually said is that this was destined for him, you know, on a soul level. He chose this as part of this incarnation. So although on a conscious level he's not aware that this is on the verge of happening, spiritually his higher self and his spirit team are really preparing him already for this transition to occur. So not all deaths are destined. Sometimes we will die and something will happen whenever it wasn't supposed to. And my guide has actually said some people do incarnate into this life, and it's a bit of an open gambit, she has just said. So it's not really specified, and they're just keen to go with the flow and see what happens. There are people and this is one of the things that I was actually quite shocked about. There are people, she has said, who incarnate without a life contract and with no destined things or particular things that they want to achieve in this life. They just come with a blank sheet of paper almost and decide to write the script while they're here. So that's worth keeping in mind, that not everybody has a life contract. Most people do, but she did say to me that actually there are occasions when people don't. So there you go. So the next question, it was actually sort of off the back of that one. If there's a war, for example, you know, if there's a war and someone dies, but their death wasn't destined, however, they were destined for someone else, what happens to the other person and their life contract? So the first thing that my guide is saying about that is that it wouldn't be a common occurrence where if somebody had destined things in their life contract, that they then would go on not to fulfill that. Most people, if they have a life contract and specific things in there and a destined person, chances are spirit would maneuver that person and remove them from those situations in order to ensure that they fill out their life contract. And I think that raises the question, well, if I'm not a psychic medium, or if I'm not an intuitive person, or I'm not aware of my gift, how can they maneuver me out of it? And spirit can have as subtle or as strong a presence as they need to have. And if you are a 28-year-old female and you were destined to meet and marry another 28-year-old female, and you're both living in an area that is going to get blown up, and spirit know for sure that it's going to get blown up and it's part of the war and everything else, they would have had foresight. Now it starts to get very complicated because not everything is destined. Some things are stronger chance, some things are likely to happen, but not everything is destined. There is an element of chance as well with some things, but there is a strong chance she's telling me that spirit can see things, what's coming. And even though they don't always divulge that information to us, they often know the answer. So if you've ever had a private reading from me and you're asking about, oh, who is coming into my life, and I'm being told, well, there's a selection of people, there's a strong chance that spirit do know who's coming in, but they just don't want to give you that information at this stage, or it would have a detrimental impact on your life for you to have that information. However, in saying that, if there are specific things that are destined on your path, spirit will know well in advance, and they'll be putting doubt in your mind. They'll be steering you off in different directions. They'll be orchestrating things. They'll be pulling strings behind the scenes. So there's a great deal that goes in to making sure people fulfill their life contracts. However, there are going to be instances where the contract is unable to be fulfilled. And what she said to me is, if you were destined to meet somebody and that somebody unfortunately died through whatever means they died, and they weren't able to fulfill the contract, she showed me a negotiation happening in spirit. And this is information that she's bringing me through now. But she is showing me information happening in spirit. Negotiations happening in spirit. And she said about finding a replacement person. So there would have to be some significant changes. And she said about having a solicitor involved. And I don't know if that's symbolic, but she is saying that it's a serious discussion and it would require senior people because it can have a significant impact on other things. But where the contract isn't fulfilled between two people, then they have strict instructions on finding like a replacement for that destined person, and like as close a match as possible. And she is saying that it might be brought forward to another incarnation, where if those people were supposed to meet, or if they had some karma that still had to be drawn out, then it might be that would spill over into the next incarnation or into another incarnation where they'll be brought together. But she's saying to me now, there's loads of different options. She said it would be impossible to discuss and cover everything with us. And she said that the human mind just couldn't comprehend it. And I am starting to feel like that because already I've just got like an overload of information and I'm thinking, well, what about this? What about that? What about the other? So it's very, very complex to describe. But I guess the short version is that life contracts can be rewritten, but they're in the minority, and that's a rare occurrence whenever there's things that are destined on your path that can't be completed. So I think that I have talked enough. I think that I have given you enough information. I know it was a bit double-edged sword because we're talking a bit about the afterlife, but we're also talking about how to connect with spirit. And I think that, the one thing that I would say is everybody has their own truth. And this is my experience. This is the experience that I have with spirit. This is the information they give me. And what you'll see over time as well, if you're paying attention to the predictions and things that I've put on TikTok and even the additional predictions that I've put on YouTube, you will start to see things come to fruition. And those prophecies, I guess, I don't know if you would call them prophecies or predictions, but when things start to come to light, that will obviously give you comfort that I am accurate and, that I can be relied upon for bringing information through from spirit. However, I would say that you have to be really sure that things resonate with you, because there will be things that I say that won't resonate with you at all. And you'll be thinking, no, that doesn't sound right. That's not for me. And that's fine. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the information isn't accurate, but it's definitely not, you're not ready for it at that time. However, my knowledge base is growing all the time. So, what I felt to be true 5 years ago, for example, isn't necessarily what I feel is true today. So I think we're all on our own journeys of truth, and I can only really tell you what my truth is, and know that I'm coming from a place of love and a place of light with the information that I bring through. But I think that you do have to have things resonate with you. And if something isn't sitting right with you, or you're thinking, no, that doesn't make sense, I don't agree with that, you have to trust that feeling. And it might be that actually you're just not ready for it today. Maybe in, 5 years from now, you'll be like, that Gemma Lonsdale, she was right. But that might not happen. You might be thinking, well, actually, no, that Gemma Lonsdale, no, she's not the one for me. But I really believe this Tracy person or this Mark, and I really value their experience. So we're all on this journey, and we're all at different parts on this journey. We're all headed in different directions. So you have to go with your truth and what resonates with you. And it's the same with cards. If cards aren't calling to you and you're thinking, no, that's not right for me, then maybe it's not right for you. Maybe cards aren't going to be the way forward for you. Not everybody is going to learn to develop their spirituality, their spiritual connection, I should say, using a deck of cards. That it's not a one size fits all here. You have to go with what you feel and what you do. I can give you like the information that I get from spirit, and I can tell you what worked for me. I can tell you what has worked for other people that I have worked with. But ultimately you need to find your own way. So it's about trying to get the tools in order to build your courage up and get working and doing something. And then you'll find that naturally you will just start to develop your own style, your own flair, and that'll be you off. But the hardest thing for me was finding my feet and building my confidence up in the information. Well, at the start, it was building my confidence up in the information that I got, because I was a bit confused and thinking, well, is that my own mind, or is that something that spirit have given me? So there was that battle in my head. And then I was thinking, okay, I trust that they've given me this information, but then I was concerned that I wasn't interpreting it properly. So there's a lot of hurdles to overcome until you get to the point where you're getting so much information accurate, having so many things confirmed, that there's just no doubt left in your mind. But you'll only get there through practice. I know a girl who, she's a very good friend of mine, and I know that she's going to be an absolutely phenomenal medium, but she has been developing for, I think, about 10 years now. And she spends money on different teachers and spiritual gurus, and but she's still not working as a medium. And the thing is that what I find personally, and not everybody will want to do this full time. Some people will want to do it part time. Some people will just do it as a sideline to help people and won't make money from it. Some people will use it as part of their careers. Maybe you're a nurse or a doctor and you're thinking, oh, this is actually really helping me, because yes, the medical journal says this, but my intuition is telling me that this isn't accurate. Or my clairaudience is, kicking in, and I can hear spirit, I can hear God, I can hear, the Holy Ghost, and they're telling me this. And so I know how to help this person, and I'm not going to go with the medical journal for this. So there's a lot of different ways in which this gift can be used. But it's just about using it. And that's the way that you will learn, is by using it. So if you want to develop, then I would encourage you to join Facebook groups that or if you can search, I can't remember the name of any of them actually, but there are certain groups on there, psychic development group, mediumship development groups, where you can go. People will want free readings, or they will post a picture and you can see what information you get from that picture. And it might be information about a person that's living, or it could be information where they're looking to connect maybe with a loved one or bring some information through. And those groups were an amazing resource for me. Whenever I was developing and getting information out there. So if you are serious about your development journey, then definitely get yourself into groups like that, because they can be a really good starting point where you're sort of hidden behind your phone in a way. You're not having to worry about sitting with somebody face to face and the embarrassment or the fear of getting information wrong. It is a little bit easier. And also because those groups are for people who are developing, then, it can be a lot better. Just a bit of a softer landing, really, if you are struggling with your confidence. But not everybody does struggle with their confidence. Some people are like, wow, I'm amazing, I'm just going to crack on with it. And that's brilliant as well. So whatever works for you. I am considering doing some development groups where we'll work on developing our skill set and spirit communication and receiving that information, whether it's intuitively or clairvoyantly, however you get it. So I haven't set anything up like that. I've been so busy with my other coaching and my readings. Now I've got my YouTube stuff. So it is still something that I'm very much thinking about, but I've not taken the step towards it yet. But my guide is even saying now for certain, I'm definitely going to be teaching others how to develop their connection. And it is something I've known for a while that is, part of my role is going to be as a teacher and teaching people and helping them develop. I do have a card deck coming out in December this year, Oracle cards, which will definitely help people develop their connection, but you don't have to buy mine. Buy the cards that call to you, look at the artwork, the colors, and just go with what you're feeling the most drawn to. And what I find is I'll have a look, I'll always have a look at the cards, and if I'm sitting thinking constantly about that card deck or a particular card deck a day or two later, then I buy it. And I think I've ended up with far too many decks, but it's a bit of an addiction, I think. But that's the recommendation that I would give to you anyway. So I hope that has been interesting for you. I hope that you've been able to take something from that. And I know that it was a bit of a mismatch of information because we sort of had the how do I develop my spiritual set, my spiritual skill set, but also what about the afterlife, what happens here. However, it's still interesting to know, isn't it? So I will leave you with that. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that you're enjoying the podcast. If it is content that you're enjoying, don't forget to subscribe, share it out, get the word out there. The podcast is just recently, I've started to upload it to YouTube, the video version. So I think it was only from about episode 71, and I think this is probably about episode 76, 77. So there's not that many on YouTube. The majority are they're all on Apple Podcast and Spotify. So that's really where you want to go if you are looking to access the historic ones. But I will keep producing it. I'm always open to suggestions, I guess, from people on the topics that they want to cover. So as long as it's to do with spirituality, healing, living a better life, living a more positive life, helping others, things like that, anything like that, I'm really keen to cover. And then obviously for the political stuff that my guide has me posting about at the moment, I'm trying to sort of keep that separate. Yes, it's been great recording this as always, and I will look forward to your feedback and the messages I get. I love the emails and stuff that I get from you all whenever the new podcast goes out. I really enjoy those, and I'll look forward to those, hopefully from this one as well. And if you have any suggestions of things that you do want to cover, then give me a shout.